Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll chant verse 10 together and then we'll do 11 after. Uda Plutam Vishvam Idam Tadashit Sid Yan Nidrayami Lita Drin Yami Layat Ahindra Talpe Dishayana Ekaha Krita Shana Svatma Rato Nirihaha Uda Plutang Vishvamidam Tadasid Yanidraya Milita Drin Yami Layat Ahindra Talpe Dishayana Ekaha Kritakshana Svatma Rato Nirihaha Uda Plutam Vishvamidam Tadasid Yanidrayami Lita Drin Yami Layat Ahindra Talpe Dishayana Eka Krita Kshana Svatma Rato Nirihaha. Please chant.
Udaplutam Vishvam Idam Tadasid Yannidraya Milita Dranyamilayat Ahindratalpe Dishayana Eka Kritakshana Svatmaratau Niriha.
Hare Krishna. Uda Plutam Idam Tadashit Yan Nidraya Milita Dranyamiliyat Ahinda Talpe Adishana Eka Krita Shana Shvatma Ratau Niriha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
उदाप्लुतं विश्वमिदं तदासीत् यन्निद्रया मीलयत अहीन्द्रतल्पे अदिशन यान एकः कृतक्षण स्वात्मरतो निरीह. हरे कृष्ण. चारुचंद्र प्रभु, दंडवत प्रणाम. दिस इज कृष्ण प्रिया. Hare Krishna. I'm muting myself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Udapulutam Vishwam Idam Tatasid Yan Nidraya Milite Dryamilayat Ahindra Talpe Adishayanihi Kaha Kritushana Swatmaratav Nirihaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Oh, anyone else? Uda, water. Aplutam, submerged in. Vishvam, the three worlds. Idam, this. Tada, at that time. Asit, is so. It so remained. Yat, in which. Nidraya, in slumber. Amilita, closed. Drik, eyes. Nyamilayat, not completely closed. Ahi Indra, the great snake, Ananta. Talpe, on the bed of. Adishanaha, lying on. Ekaha, alone. Krita Shanaha, being engaged. Svatmaratau, enjoying in his internal potency. Nirihaha, without any part of external energy. Translation. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Purport. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Then, text 11. Sonta sarire nripita bhutta shukshmaha kalat nikam shaktim udirayanaha uvasatasmin salile padesve yata nalo dharuni ruddha viryaha. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Ala. Purport. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems, merged into the water of dissolution, the living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gaur Vanipacharane Nirbhishesha Shunyavadipas Chapte Sutane Om Ajnana Tmirandasha Ganjana Shalakaya Chakshur Niliram Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Trubhya Shakapa Sindhubhya Eva Chapatitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Again, welcome. So here we have Maitreya Rishi. He's speaking to Vidura. And at first, the beginning of this chapter, first he established how he heard the Bhagavat Purana in the authorized disciplic succession. And now that he's done that, now that he's established that he himself is also authorized and is able to repeat this important message, then he starts with the very important message, which in the beginning, of course, is a very important fundamental fact. So, as I mentioned, the first 9 verses of this chapter provided us with the knowledge of the importance of putting our faith in the authorized Shastra above all other forms of attaining knowledge, right? And that is called the praman, the proof, right? So we are to understand the Supreme Lord from the descending process, right? The Vedas comes down to us, is handed to us. It's the proof. It's not affected by imperfect senses or illusion or mistakes or cheating, right? So that's the praman, the proof. So that was the first 9 verses of this chapter, establishing the authority in which this knowledge was received and can again be transmitted. So that's praman. Then today's verse, we're at the beginning of the what's called the prameya, which is knowledge or the way that we can perceive that proof, right? The proof of the Vedas is there. But the way that we are to perceive it comes through what's called prameya. Right? So to know the truth, to be able to distinguish reality from illusion, which is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is for, to help us distinguish reality from illusion, we must know who Krishna is, how he works through his various energies or shaktis. We have to understand the nature of his pastimes, his rasa. We have to know who we, the jivas, are in general, but also the difference between the jivas who misuse their free will and falsely identified with their conditioned nature, the bada jivas, and the jivas who made proper use of their free will and identify with their constitutional nature, the mukta jivas. And then also how we jivas, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are inconceivably and simultaneously one with, yet distinct from Krishna, achintya beta beta. So in other words, understanding our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord as sharing the same qualities, but in vastly different quantities. So these 7 items that I mentioned, Krishna, his energies, his pastimes, the jivas in the bound state, the jivas in the liberated state, and achintya beta beta. These 7 items make up sambandha jnana, and that's a portion of the prameya. Prameya is how we understand the proof, the praman. So that's sambandha jnana, knowledge of the relationship between these things. Krishna, his energies, the nature of his pastimes, the nature of the jivas, what their condition is in the bound state and what their condition is in the liberated state, and how we are simultaneously and inconceivably the same as the Supreme Lord, but also different. So that's sambandha jnana. Then, of course, there's the process or the method by which to appropriately apply these 7 items of knowledge of this relationship between us, Krishna, and applying that in our daily lives. That's called abhideya. That's the process of bhakti. And then the prayojana, which is the ultimate goal, is acting purely in our constitutional nature, not our conditioned nature, but our constitutional nature of servants of the Supreme Lord and engaging lovingly, favorably in his pastimes. So that's praman and prameya. The truth, the proof, where it comes from, and then how to understand that. So these 10 items, the 7 from sambandha, the abhideya, the prayojana, and then the praman, these 10 items are known as the dashamul, which is, again, it's the culmination of sambandha, abhideya, prayojana, as well as the authorized descending process that supports these 3. And then Lord Chaitanya told Srila Sanatana Goswami, I quote this verse often, this is Madhya Lila, 6th chapter, verses 178 and 179, wherein Lord Chaitanya tells Srila Sanatana Goswami that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the central point of all relationships. Relationships means sambandha. Acting in devotional service to him, abhideya, is one's real occupation. And the attainment of love of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life, prayojana. These 3 subject matters, sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana, are described in the Vedic literature, which is the praman. Sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana are the prameya, and the Vedic literature is praman. If one tries to explain the Vedic literature in a different way, not regarding these 3, he is indulging in imagination. Any interpretation of the self-evident Vedic version is simply imaginary, right? So this is the language of the Vedas. This is how it is spoken. This is how it is to be understood. And this is how it is to be discussed, right? So just like in the beginning of this chapter, Maitreya Rishi was explaining how he heard the message, but also we see that he is relaying that message back in the exact same way he heard it. He's not giving his interpretation or his impression or his whatever. He's not putting any sort of spin on it. He understands the principle of the Vedas, and he's representing it in that way, honoring that principle, right? So anytime, as Lord Chaitanya said, anytime one is discussing Vedic literature, if these three subject matters, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, aren't actually being addressed, then we're not actually discussing Vedic literature, right? So this is what Lord Chaitanya is saying. So it's no surprise that Maitreya Rishi is actually following this format in relaying the Vedic knowledge to Vidura, right? So again, first he established the authority of what he's about to speak about by explaining that it was received in a bona fide disciplic succession. And now he's going to start about Krishna's nature, energies, activities, and so on, right? He's following this format. And we also see that the four essential or nutshell verses of both Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, as well as Maitreya's conversation here with Vidura, all starts with the same thing. It's talking about how Krishna is the source of all spiritual and material worlds, how everything is emanating from him, and how before the material creation and after its dissolution, Krishna still always exists, engaging in his eternal pastimes. So this conversation that we're reading now between Maitreya and Vidura, it's an expansion of those four original verses spoken by Lord Vishnu to Lord Brahma. And naturally, all of those stories start in the same place, right? Because it's just a retelling of this story. It's being expanded, but keeping that principle in mind. So it's okay to expand on Vedic literature in order to explain it to someone who's coming from a certain position. But that principle always has to be met, that we're talking about the relationship between the jivas and the Supreme Lord, his different energies, the nature of his pastimes, how the jivas, or what the jivas' nature are when they're bound, what the jivas' nature is when they are liberated, and how the jivas are simultaneously and inconceivably one with the Supreme Lord in quality, same qualities, but majorly different quantity, right? The Supreme Lord is infinite. No matter how much he gives of himself, he always remains infinite. And the jivas were infinitesimal, minute, right? So the same qualities are there, but the qualities or the quantity is very much different. So naturally, all these stories start in the same place, talking about how the Supreme Lord existed before material creation. Then material creation expands from him. It's nothing but him. Everything is his and him simultaneously. And although we conditioned beings dealing with the temporary world, means temporary by nature, have to go through these six transformations of coming into being, growing, remaining for some time, producing some effects, dwindling and dying. The Supreme Lord and his eternal associates don't go through these transformations. It's eternal. So first thing that we always need to know is that everything is coming from Krishna. The things that we are going through in this material world are insignificant. And it is in our best interest to reconnect with our constitutional nature, right? So this is why this is important for us to know. This topic will come up again and again in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's for good reason, because we here in this material world, having misidentified with the gross and subtle bodies, being covered by this conditional nature, we don't see things beyond our own perception, right? We're limited by imperfect senses, as I mentioned before, the tendency to make mistakes, being subject to illusion, and having the tendency to cheat when something isn't going the way we would like it to go, right? Even when we have the best knowledge of something, still, if we don't want it to go a certain way, we will cheat. Like the most common example I give is medicine. So sometimes when we get sick, we realize, okay, I'm feeling awful and I want to feel better. And we have experienced that the last time we were sick, we took this medicine, which although it tasted absolutely terrible, it helped us get better, right? But it tasted absolutely terrible. So sometimes the mind will just say, forget about it. You know, you don't even know if it was the medicine that made you better anyway. How about you don't take the medicine? I bet you'll get better. So we have this tendency to cheat. If we really don't want something to happen, we will make up any excuse, right? Any excuse to get out of it. And this is what we do here in the material world. So even if we acknowledge that God exists, he's generally far, far in the background of our, what we consider to be very important lives, right? So maybe we pray to him when we need something, right? Something's going wrong. And so then we're turning to Krishna, please, Krishna, provide this. Maybe many of us, honestly, in our prayers, we're actually telling him how to do his job better, right? When we're saying, Krishna, hey, I don't know if you know this, but there's all this stuff going on in this material world, and it's pretty tragic. So, hey, can you do something different, right? We do that. And even many of the ones who consider themselves devout, they put more emphasis on asking the Lord for their daily bread than they do on trying to become his proper servants, right? So for us in this material world, we always have to start by understanding that not only does everything come from God, but everything that we experience here in this material world is absolutely insignificant. Anything that we're perceiving as separate from the Supreme Lord is an illusion, right? So it's absolutely insignificant. Now, everything comes from Krishna, so everything has the potential to be used properly and become absolutely significant. But as long as we're not seeing that connection, as long as we have material consciousness, seeing things separate from the Supreme Lord, then everything we're dealing with is absolutely insignificant. It's temporary. We're not going to be able to hold on to it. And it's not worth the time and energy that we put in trying to maintain and control it. So everything we currently value, everything that we think is so important, even the bodies that we identify as, they all come to an end. And when that happens, and it happens a lot because we're talking about these periodic dissolutions of the material world, and this happens a lot. It's like the breathing, right? The breathing of Mahavishnu. For us, it seems like a very long time, but in the grand scheme of things, this is happening over and over and over and over and over again. And when that does happen, when these dissolutions happen, Krishna is still there. He's still there in his eternal nature, enjoying his eternal pastimes. That is reality. And everything we perceive as not having a direct connection to him is illusion. This is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us, reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of everyone. And even understanding theoretically that everything comes from Krishna, but then not acting accordingly, that is also illusion, right? Because we know, sure, everything comes from Krishna. Where else could it come from? But if we're acting or we're using these things as if we are the controller or we are the independent enjoyers of these things, we're still an illusion, even though we know in theory that these things are all Krishna. If we're not using them as Krishna desires, lovingly, favorably in his service, then we're dealing with illusion. If we truly understood that everything came from him, every single one of our activities would be favorable devotional service, untinged by the desire for fruitive results or the pride of intellectual prowess. We would be engaged in unmotivated and uninterrupted pure devotional service if we actually knew. So we know in theory everything comes from Krishna. When we actually understand that and actually see everything in connection to Krishna, then there's no more desire for fruitive results. There's no more pride of our intellectual prowess. There's no external motivation, and there's no interruption at all, whether we're awake, sleeping, whatever, always engaging in Krishna service, because that's all there is. That's reality. Everything else is illusion. So the verses that we're talking about today, this is where we start, right? Our understanding of the distinction between reality and illusion starts by understanding that before this material creation, which is what many of us consider to be all in all, because we only accept things that we can perceive. Before this material creation even existed, Krishna was there. And after it's all dissolved, Krishna will still be there. And until we understand our relationship with him and start properly acting according to that relationship, we will remain in perpetual illusion. So this is the first step in God realization. And quite frankly, it's a big step. It's not necessarily an easy step. It can be an easy step, but for those of us who are very much deeply attached to this notion that we can somehow control and enjoy this material world, it's difficult to give up that desire to, hold on to the things that we think that we've accumulated through our activities and through our logic, right? So this is the first step in God realization. In order to acknowledge Krishna as the center of everything, we have to acknowledge that we are not the center of everything, right? And that's where it becomes difficult, right? Most of us aren't prepared to do that yet. We think that we're good, right? We got this. It's all under control. This is what we think. But actually, we're not the controllers. We are a very small aspect of a cause of an action. But Krishna is the ultimate cause. So, in other words, if we have enough punya, piety, and we have the desire and Krishna agrees to it, we can accomplish something. In that sense, we are small doers. But no matter what, if Krishna is not allowing it, not even a blade of grass moves without his will. So we think we have it, right? We think it's all under control, but we're not. And so it's difficult for us to let that go, that tendency to want to control, to want to figure it out on our own, to want to, fix things, right? And so what better way to learn of our own limitations than to next hear, because after we go over this bit, the next part of the chapter, all the way to the end, is going to be talking about how even Lord Brahma, right? He's the secondary creator of the universe, so he's a big deal. He's a huge deal, right? We don't even perceive a pixel of the entire universe that Brahma expanded, right? We think that this tiny little part of a planet that we occupy is it's everything, right? And some don't even leave the county that they were born in, right? So if we're just going by what we've experienced, we don't have much experience at all, infinitesimally small. So Brahma, the creator of the universe that we're in, that we only can perceive a very insignificant portion of, with his 4 huge brains in our universe. In other universes, he has more than 4 brains, but we're in the smallest of those universes. So we have a 4-headed Brahma. So even with those 4 huge brains and with his much higher qualification than we possess, he couldn't discern what to do until he got the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So if he couldn't figure it out on his own, there's absolutely no chance that we can either. We need the mercy of the Supreme Lord, right? And so we also have to understand how to get that mercy, or how to become proper recipients of that mercy. Thankfully, Krishna, his mercy is always there, it's always available. But we're not always ready to receive it. We're not always willing to grab onto it and also let go of the material ideas that we're currently holding on to with a great deal of strength. So this first step of God realization, understanding that everything is coming from Krishna, all the things that we experience in this material world are his potencies. Since it is such a big step, it can take a whole lot of time to fully understand it and successfully navigate it, right? We can understand it in theory, no problem, makes sense. But to actually be able to navigate it and to act accordingly, to give up this very strong material attachment in the way that we live our lives. And so that is why this topic is revisited over and over again throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. So sometimes we get to hear some very sweet pastimes in between hearing this bit. But since this overwhelming propensity to control and enjoy independently from Krishna is so strong, this topic has to keep appearing in various ways to gradually whittle down our false ego and set us on the right path, right? And it's funny because sometimes we hear this topic directly, it's just straight direct from the philosophers. And sometimes it's described through an allegory, right? When someone's, a bit more attached and they can't just take straight philosophy, then you have to present that same philosophy in an allegory. Start telling a story about, there was this prince this one time and he lived his life like this, and there was, so sometimes it's described like that. And many times, oftentimes, we don't even realize that these are always the topics that are being discussed. These 7 items of Sambandha, Krishna, his different energies, the nature of his pastimes, the nature of the jivas, both in the bound state and in the liberated state, and the idea, the understanding that the jivas are simultaneously the same in quality, but different in quantity of the Supreme Lord. These things are over and over and over being discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the Sambandha part. Then the Abhideya part just means how to act according to that knowledge. Now that I know who I am, who Krishna is, what the nature is, what the relationship is, and how to act accordingly, then you actually do act accordingly, right? So one bit's knowledge, the other part's application. So that's Abhideya, application. And then Prayojana, the goal, of course, is to completely shed our conditioned nature. So we're only left with our constitutional nature, so that we can engage lovingly, favorably in Krishna service, right? And enjoy with him in his eternal pastimes. So, but it's funny how sometimes we actually don't even see that this is what's being discussed. So we have to hear these topics from so many different points of view, because although, like I said, they're easy to understand in theory, it's much more difficult to figure out how to apply them in our daily lives. And so this is why these topics are told in so many different ways over and over and over again. So each of us can finally say, oh, now I get it. I've been living my life this way the whole time. I've been thinking that I've been doing it right, but actually, no, I've been completely attached. And it was all here. It was all here laid out completely. And, all we had to do was actually follow the process and pay attention to it. So, although in his expansion of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he appears to be dormant, sleeping, he is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, just as fire exists in its dormant state within firewood, right? You see that the trees are there, and year after year, they're growing, they're growing, they're growing. What they're doing is they're taking in solar energy and they're storing it. So it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So you have the potential, the stored potential of the sun, the fire from the sun. And so when you light that wood, then that potential comes out. So in the same way, although Garbhodakashaya Vishnu appears to be dormant, that energy, the internal energy, it's still going on. So the period of activities for us rebellious jivas, it comes and goes, right? It's cyclic. Because the nature of matter is that it's temporary. It goes through those 6 transformations, as we mentioned. But the period of activities of the Supreme Lord and his associates is always, it's eternal. It's always going on. So even when, as a matter of external pastimes, he seems to be dormant or sleeping, internally, he's always engaging in loving pastimes with pure devotees. So in order to reconnect with our constitutional nature and to attain our ultimate goal, prayojana, we have to purify our polluted consciousness by the process of bhakti, the abhideya. And the first step in doing that is to understand fully that everything comes from Krishna and to use it accordingly, right? We have to stop considering things as ours and doing with them as we wish, and start understanding that everything is Krishna's and use it all appropriately in his devotional service. And so this is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is always directing us to do, reminding us who we are, who Krishna is, what our relationship is, the nature of that relationship, how to appropriately act in that relationship so that we can actually meet our ultimate goal. Okay, so we can stop here for today, and let's see if there is any discussion. Any questions or comments or additions on what we spoke about today, or anything?
Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
much.
Oh,
Sorry, Prabhu. Go ahead. I'll speak later.
no, please go.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So many nice points you pointed out, that our understanding of the scripture should be very crystal clear, that who is Krishna, what is his activities, and who we are and how we are related. And you say that, theory is reading about this, understanding, but application is very important. And when we apply that, we get purified. So we say that sometimes we are not letting go this material attachment. That's why we cannot learn the spiritual activity. So you clarified everything so beautiful. I took all the notes and I'm going to revise every day. So it reminds you of where we are standing. So it's like an internal process. We have to analyze our own self and how we use Krishna's, whatever Krishna has given to us in this life, in his devotional service, not for our sense gratification. So we are doing this for so many years, this bhakti yoga. Sometimes, we fall short a little bit. So for myself, I'm saying you. So, so today, your lecture was superb. I really got a lot of points for myself. And thank you very much, Prabhuji. Always admire your class. I bow down to you and Hare Krishna. And please keep on giving these classes so we can get enlivened and become pure again and again. Thank you. We took
Thank you for your
initiation
kind words.
together, remember?
We did. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, so it was very nice. Very sweet class, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Thank you
pranam.
for your kind words. Thank you.
Yeah,
Krishna's
all glory
mercy.
to Srila Prabhupada.
I've been fortunate to hear from many great souls and fortunate to be able to actually understand some of it and give it back. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vrindavaneshwari. Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. So yeah, thank you as always for a wonderful class. I second that what Krishna Prabhu was saying. Yeah, I wanted to kind of highlight the point that you had made about things needing to be repeated in different ways. Because I know I know that that's something for me. I need to hear things over and over again, and sometimes I'm like, well, I heard this before. It's like, yeah, but am I living it? No. Okay, then I need to hear it again. And I think that's the difference. Sometimes we might think that some of the topics may seem repetitive, or maybe some of the message may seem like we've heard it again. I can speak only for myself, but I can say, okay, I've heard this before. Intellectually, yes, I know this. I may have memorized this verse or whatever, but it's not integrated into my consciousness. It's not in my daily activities and in my daily life. So that means, like what you said, is that it has to chip away at it by the repetition of the message. So thank you for that reminder and the repeated message, because I sure need it getting it through my thick skull. So thank you.
Yeah, the most common thing among aspiring devotees, because we all hear, the standard Sunday feast class is how we're not the body, right? And so if a devotee, he's been coming around for a long time, they walk in and they hear how the class is about how we're not the body. Oh, yeah, we already know this. So they walk out. But the thing is, we don't actually know that. We don't behave as if we're not the body. We very much behave as if we are this body. And so we do have to keep hearing it. That's why Srila Prabhupada spoke on it so often. It wasn't because there was always new people and he was always trying. There was often new people and he was trying to explain it. But the truth is, we are all the new people, because if we don't start acting as if we are not the body, then we are still new people. That's how it is. It doesn't matter how many years we've been around. If we're still identifying with the body, we're not understanding the basis of the philosophy. And so accepting it, sure, that's good, but then acting accordingly, that's a different thing. And so that is what Srila Prabhupada has given us through the authority of the previous acharyas, the process of devotional service and how we can hear and chant in the association of devotees to increase our faith and start the devotional practice under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, and recognize and remove all of the different obstacles that are holding us back. And so we actually have to be conscious about this, right? It's not something that we just, sign up for and then it automatically happens. We actually have to want it. We have to be sincere about it. And we actually have to follow through with what we know and actually make it part of what we are. It is part of what we are, but since we're covered, we don't recognize that. So we have to purify ourselves of our conditioned nature by engaging in the process of bhakti to reveal what's already inside of us, this eternal knowledge. But yeah, the repetition is absolutely necessary. And from time to time, we have to kind of hear it in a different way or see it under certain circles. Concept called smasana vairagya. It means the renunciation you feel after seeing a corpse, after attending a funeral, right? You understand that our time in this world is limited, that this could also happen to us. And so for a very small period of time, we become detached and we start actually focusing on things that are more important. But oftentimes that wears off after a while because we still have this attachment to do the other things, right? So sometimes we get this little bit of clarity. But for us aspiring devotees, we have to actually seek out that clarity. We're actually asking for it every day when we're chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We're addressing the Lord and we're asking him and his energies to please engage us in your devotional service. Please take away this covering, this Cheto Darpana Marjana, this cleanse the mirror of my heart so that I can actually understand and see things as they are, so that then I can start acting accordingly. Because as long as we're not seeing things as they are, we don't even know that we're not acting properly. As far as we're concerned, we're doing fine. We're doing our best, right? But with the cleansing process, chanting the holy name, then it actually becomes clear. We actually see it. And then it becomes natural for us to engage all these things properly in Krishna service. So that's the beauty of the process, is that it's designed in such a way that if we actually are sincere and put our faith in it, the huge beauty of it is that we can't do anything on our own part to get bhakti. It doesn't rely on physical strength. It doesn't rely on intellectual prowess. It only relies on our sincerity and our endeavor to actually grab Krishna's mercy and let go of our material tendencies, right? And so, yes, we do have to be reminded over and over and over and over again, because we're not there yet, right? So, like I said, it's a big first step. So we have to, and we also need to be reminded from time to time. It's not that this is the only thing that we should ever talk about. We do have to be reminded from time to time of Krishna's sweet pastimes, right? Because then we understand, okay, yeah, this is what this is all about, right? So we can get inspiration, encouragement like that, but we have to have a good balance between Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. If we focus too much on the goal, but we don't pay much attention to the process or understanding the relationship, then we become prakriti sahajas. We think that we're just talking about the goal, and we just think that we're there because we don't know what the process is, nor do we know our relationship. So we'll never really reach the goal, but we'll just be focused on it and talking about it. So we'll think we're doing all right, but we won't be. If we focus too much on the sambandha of what the relationship is, but we don't bother to actually put that into action, we ignore the abhidheya, then we can't get to the prayojan, right? And if we want to focus mostly on the process before understanding what the relationship is, then you have the people that think that it is their strength and their intellectual prowess which is going to, in other words, their karma mimamsas, it's their actions that are going to cause their liberation, right? And so there has to be a balance between all three of these things. We have to keep inspired by understanding what the ultimate goal is, right? What we're actually striving for. We have to actually know who we are and where we are, and then how to get from where we are to where we want to go, right? So having the balance of these three, Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana, that's the most important thing. And so we see that Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives us this balance naturally, right? So we hear stories like this, and then we hear, Krishna's sweet pastimes, which are still talking about these things, but just with a little bit more flavor. But then you don't want to have too much flavor, because then you get distracted by the flavor. And since we still don't understand the relationship, we try to imitate the flavor that goes on in the spiritual world here in the material world. So then, it's a delicate dance, this process of bhakti. But if we pay attention and we're sincere and we follow the instructions of the spiritual master, who is always going to be relaying the Shastra. And if we follow the examples of the sadhus, who again are also going to be living the example of the Shastra, then this process, it actually becomes easy, right? And this is said over and over. Krishna says, one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it, right? So with the surrender, it's tough because, we're very much attached. But yes, it's repetition, very important. All right, anyone else? Okay. That seems to be all. So we can stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Ki
jai,
jai.
Ki Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Charachandra Prabhu. Wonderful class.
Thank you, thank you.
Jai, jai. How's everything in Mayapur? Sri Mayapur Dham?
Yeah, everything's going on. The mercy of Lord Chaitanya is incredibly strong. He is very merciful. So it's great. It's great to be here. I'm actually going to be coming back to America in a week for a little while.
Okay.
So I'm going to miss this place, but hopefully Lord Chaitanya will allow me to come back.
Will you be coming through the Philadelphia area? Will you be in Pennsylvania?
Yeah,
I'll
be in Pennsylvania for a few days, and then I'll mostly be in Kentucky. There's some doctor stuff I got to go to.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll be through Philly. I'm flying into Philly, and then I got to organize some sort of vehicle, and then yeah, so a few days I'll be around.
Okay.
Hope to see you this time, Prabhu.
I'll try this time.
No, if you cannot come, I come see you.
Okay.
But I hope
Thank
to
you, thank you.
have your darshan.
It'll be
Because,
my pleasure.
it's been a long time. I haven't met you since long time.
The last time I saw you was a few years ago on Mother's Day, and you led a beautiful kirtan at the Philadelphia Temple. I remember it well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. But I would love to see you.
As long as I'm in the area long enough, I will absolutely come and see you.
Just let me know what time
yeah, I
will
will.
be there. So if you come to Philadelphia Temple, I can definitely come and see you.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.